Welcome back, everyone. This will be my new Flash video for the end of the DCEU. James Gunn announced his plans for the future of DC movies with a reboot of the entire DC franchise. And because of that, there are a bunch of changes happening to the plot of the Flash movie, along with Aquaman 2, pretty much everything that's happening this year and next year. There are still 4 DC movies coming out in 2023 that were part of the old era of the DCEU, and they're still releasing them. Like, they haven't changed that. They haven't canceled any of the movies that are coming out next year. So I'll explain what's changed, all the cameo scenes that they've changed, and all the stuff that they were originally setting up that is now changed because of all the DC plans that James Gunn is making. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. It's still a developing situation, so I will continue to make videos for it as James Gunn makes more announcements about the future DC slate of movies. He did say that they would make more announcements at the beginning of next year, so we will find exactly what their plans are, like concrete plans for the next couple of years of DC really soon. I just did a video about Henry Cavill basically being fired as Superman. Good news for him though, like the day after that happened, he also released a trailer for the Warhammer series and an announcement about what his new plan is with that going forward after he left The Witcher as well. I did a big trailer video for it, so I'll link it in the description below and at the end of this. It's a big W for Henry Cavill. It's really good news for him, so I'm really happy that it worked out. Because it really sucks that he's not going to get to make Man of Steel 2 now, because as recently as October, the entire plans for the future of DC movies were completely different. Like, cut to November, everything changes on a dime. What's happened since November is basically James Gunn effectively ending what you knew as the DCEU story universe of movies, like the Zack Snyder era of movies, the Snyderverse, whatever you want to call it. Funny thing about that though, some of his actors, like the Suicide Squad movie actors and the Peacemaker actors, are taken from Zack Snyder era movies. Like, some of them are people that Zack Snyder cast. I will address that during the video, because if he is getting rid of everybody at DC, does that mean that he's also going to recast all of his actors from the Suicide Squad movie in what's going to happen with Peacemaker Season 2? And all the 4 DC movies that are coming out next year were made as part of the DCEU under the old regime before James Gunn was hired and made all those changes. The Flash movie in particular, with all the craziness Ezra Miller's been getting up to, I think we all expected them to recast him no matter what.
My name is Ezra Miller, and I am criminally excited to be a part of the Justice League.
Originally, Warner Brothers had a plan in place to use the Flash movie to set up a new 10-year Justice League DCEU plan. This is like before October. It would culminate in a movie version of Crisis on Infinite Earths, like DC's version of Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty, Avengers 6 Secret Wars, big multiverse crossover movies split into a couple parts. They did a whole version of it in the Arrowverse a couple years ago. I did videos for all the episodes. I'll link them below in the description. It was great. Tom Welling came back as a version of Superman from Smallville. Kevin Conroy even got to play a live-action version of Batman before he passed away. May he rest in peace. They even had references to Michael Keaton's Batman during that version of Crisis on Infinite Earths. They also established that the Arrowverse was canon to the DCEU through the multiverse, thus the Ezra Miller Justice League cameo scene. It seemed like they were going to use the Flash movie to set up this new movie version of Crisis on Infinite Earths that would tie everything together in an even bigger way. But here's what's changed about all the movies because of what James Gunn did back in November, like his new 10-year plan for DC and all the recastings. Couple big changes made to some of the movies that are coming next year. Reportedly, they've removed Henry Cavill's Superman cameo scene in the Flash movie. Originally, he had filmed a scene that was supposed to show up at the end of the movie inside the Speed Force to Barry Allen. I believe it was meant to be part of their larger plans to bring Henry Cavill back as Superman full-time for Man of Steel 2 and the Justice League 2 Crisis on Infinite Earths plan that they were trying to set up. Like, it was meant to tease this really big plot that was coming up. Now, because they're not doing that, like they're not doing the movie version of Crisis on Infinite Earths, it's going to be James Gunn's plan with a completely different version of future Justice League, different actors, different everything. And Henry Cavill is not coming back as Superman. I think the idea is that they're just going to get rid of all that stuff that was teasing future upcoming things. Like, we're not going to do that upcoming stuff, so there's no reason to tease it anymore. He'd already filmed the scene. It's ready to go. Now it sounds like we won't get to see it. Maybe, fingers crossed, they'll release it as a deleted scene, because that would be great. They've also reportedly cut Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman cameo scene in Shazam! Fury of the Gods. She'd already filmed that too, because the Shazam movies are lighter in tone, more comedic. Her cameo scene was part of a fantasy that Billy Batson had, that he was dating Wonder Woman. Like every teenage boy, everyone in general is just thirsty for Wonder Woman. During the movie, they were going to show you part of that fantasy, and then he actually winds up seeing Wonder Woman in person, and they just pay off the joke about his fantasy in a funny way. The Rock was also supposed to have a Black Adam cameo scene in the movie, like Shazam versus Black Adam kind of cameo scene, Reportedly, he turned down the opportunity when given to him a while ago, and because all these changes were made, James Gunn's hired, all the DCEU plans are changing, everyone's being recast. Supposedly now, The Rock is in the middle of feuding with Warner Brothers over his future at the studio, like he was trying to set up this own self-contained franchise surrounding the Black Adam character. The rumor now is that he's done as Black Adam, like no Black Adam sequels, no Superman versus Black Adam, and the other heartbreaker, no Shazam versus Black Adam, which they've been teasing for years, ever since the ending of that first movie.
Who's that for? Well, whoever it is, I'm gonna love them no matter what, because they're an automatic part of the family.
I did videos about this like a couple years ago when the movie first came out, but if you didn't realize, that missing person that they were referring to was meant to be Black Adam. Originally, he was written to be in the movie, but The Rock wanted to separate him to develop this other franchise for Black Adam specifically. Talking more about the future of Batman, because Batman is a big character during the Flash movie, a couple different versions of Batman. Both Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton's Batman were supposed to be in the Flash movie. Ezra Miller's Flash was supposed to get the Flash ring and his brand new costume from Ben Affleck's Batman. Like the actual Flash ring is given to him by Ben Affleck's Batman. They did it in a tie-in comic recently. I don't know that they've taken any of Ben Affleck's scenes out of the movie. It sounds like he was a bigger part of the movie, so it'd be a little bit harder to just completely cut his scenes out. Even before James Gunn came on, Ben Affleck was trying to transition away from being Batman. Like this was meant to be his big swan song. He filmed a cameo scene for Aquaman 2. It was meant to be like his last big hurrah as the character. And before James Gunn came on and changed all these plans, originally their grand plan for the future of the Justice League movies, crossover Batman, was that during the Flash movie, they would set up Michael Keaton's Batman as the new crossover Justice League Batman. You may have seen the post recently where James Gunn jumped on the reporter who was trying to say that Robert Pattinson's Batman was going to be the new crossover Batman. James Gunn was going to change everything and Matt Reeves' universe was going to connect with the Justice League movies. But then James Gunn was like, hell no, we're not doing that. And Matt Reeves was like, oh, thank you for not making me cross over with the Justice League movies. Then you probably saw that they canceled the Batgirl movie. Michael Keaton had a cameo role during that. They call it a glorified cameo. He wasn't like a huge part of the movie. But that was also part of their earlier plans to make him this big crossover Batman. Because James Gunn said that part of the reason for recasting Henry Cavill's Superman with a younger actor was because they wanted to do a story earlier in Superman's life, like they were going to do what they did for Robert Pattinson's Batman and do Superman Year 2. Not an origin story for Superman, but a story earlier in his life. He said that Robert Pattinson's Batman would not cross over with the future DC movies, but Batman would be a big part of the future interconnected DC movies. This implies that they're actually changing their plans and Michael Keaton's Batman will not be their crossover Batman anymore, and they're going to recast another version of Batman who will do all the crossovers. So we'll still have two live-action versions of Batman, supposedly, after all the recastings, everything next year. We don't know who that second version of Batman is, and he hasn't said anything about who's going to cast for this new version of Superman. DC basically canceled Wonder Woman 3. It also sounds like they might wind up recasting Gal Gadot, but she could stay on. Just because so many of the actors are being recast doesn't mean that every single one will, but it implies that they might. Like, I'm not going to hold my breath that Gal Gadot stays as Wonder Woman. Also, during the Flash trailer, you probably saw that they were going to introduce a multiverse version of Supergirl on Michael Keaton Batman's Earth 89, whatever you want to call it. Her logo is the same as Henry Cavill's Superman logo, so that even though she comes from the multiverse, the version of Krypton she comes from seems like it's very similar, if not the exact same, as the version that Henry Cavill came from. They were developing a solo movie for her that they were going to do on HBO Max, but as part of separate plans, they basically got rid of the whole idea, the whole concept of doing movies exclusively for HBO Max. That wasn't part of James Gunn's plan. That was like a whole separate thing. Supergirl's movie got canceled the same way that Batgirl's movie got canceled. It's just they hadn't started filming the Supergirl movie yet. And even though the Flash movie is doing a version of Flashpoint, it's meant to be like a slightly different version. It sounds like what they'll do now is that they'll try to treat it like a one-off movie in a different universe. And James Gunn's new DC universe going forward will be set in another universe, like just completely fresh, completely different continuity. So basically what they're doing with all the DC movies next year, including the Flash movie, even though it was meant to set up a whole bunch of stuff, is try to re-edit the movies or remove scenes that were teasing future things that'll never be paid off now, so that each of the movies feels as self-contained as possible, like less crossover than there was before, and just treat it like a one-off adventure with those particular characters, and then he'll reboot everything after those movies. They might retune the ending of the Flash movie so that there's a version of Flashpoint that helps explain the big reboot that's coming. Like, just blame everything on the Flash, and when he changes everything and everybody shows up looking different, acting different, and they don't remember what happened before, that's why. Like, oh, well, the Flash messed it up. When it comes to some of James Gunn's core actors, like the Suicide Squad actors like Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, Peacemaker Season 2, John Cena's character, this is where we get to the idea that I think that he's just rebooting a lot of the major stuff, and some of the minor stuff will continue, and they'll just loosely address it. Like, a couple of the actors will be the same, but largely it will look very different. Maybe some of the characters in some of the future projects will have some jokes about that too, like, why do you look so different from the other version of Superman that I met a little while ago? Once they start promoting some of these movies, they start dropping some trailers, I'm sure there's going to be 1,000 questions, but don't be surprised if some of the subsequent trailers look very different from the early trailers and teasers they released last year for some of these movies. Like, wait a minute, where'd all the characters go? Like, it was completely different before. It's all because of this upcoming reboot. Everyone click here for that new Henry Cavill Warhammer trailer. Big W for him, really happy for him. And click here for my Avatar The Way of Water ending and Easter eggs video. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.